You have to determine where you are. And I think when you do personal inventory, looking at the proverbial board and going, you are here, it's only then that you can answer, do I want to be there? Or can you be honest enough with yourself to go, I don't like where I am. We make choices and our choices make us. And this is why many of us feel like I want to reset. What we're ultimately saying is we want to reset in our decision-making process because our decisions have caused us to arrive at a place that we really don't like. What do we say, fam? Welcome to Simplexity, a podcast where we take seemingly complex matters and attempt to make them plain and simple. My name is Sammy Foster, joined with Boots.
Good to see you as always.
Very good to see you. I've been saying lately you've been having good hair days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it cut 4 days ago.
Where at again? Let's give them a little shout out
Yeah.
for the incredible job they're doing.
Kistner's, Glen Burnie.
Kistner's.
Yep.
In Glen Burnie.
Kistner's Salon, may I add.
But it's more a barbershop, is it not? Well, I guess they would have said that if that's what they wanted to be recognized as.
Yeah, I mean, they have barbering services.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I wouldn't call it a barbershop.
Well, they do a good job.
Thank you. That's the moral of this story. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So we're bringing the season in. This is going to be episode number 8, right, Beck?
Yep.
Episode 8, 2 to go before we close out season number 6.
Mm-hmm. This one's gone by pretty fast, I thought.
It certainly has. It certainly has. And we do want to recognize this was not spoken of, or spoken about, but we do want to recognize just the increased viewership, listenership, and the encouragement. I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, me too. And I would channel that listenership and viewership into follows, if you'd be so inclined.
Amen. Follows.
Just follow.
Follows and
on
cash.
Apple and Spotify. I think you can do
That's
it, right?
right.
And cash. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
You get enough goodies.
Right. We would attribute our success largely to Mike Hughes, would we not?
I would say so. That's been the catalyst, I think.
Absolutely. His editing skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite when you just said editing
bow staff skills.
Yeah, crossbow skills. Mike has a lot of skills, to be
Yes, he
fair.
does. Yes, he does. Heck of a fisherman. Heck of a crab catcher. Is that what you call it, Mike? Sure. Crabber.
When you say crab catcher, I just picture someone like running around in a chicken coop.
Just grabbing.
Yeah.
Putting buckets over crabs.
I got one, Kelly.
Oh, man. All right. So today we got an episode. Mm-hmm. And actually, let me give you a little context and preface. How you like that?
Is that French?
Did you know that John Calvin? Did you know he was a Frenchman, but he lived in Switzerland?
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John Calvin, the founder of arguably the Presbyterian churches. Presbyterian would then become the state religion for Switzerland. Yes. And then he had a mentee by the name of John Knox that then started the Presbyterian movement in Scotland. I'm reading an incredible book right now called The Trail of Blood. It's a quick overview of church history. It's like a refresher, but it has been fascinating because there's a lot of little details that I have learned as of recently that have been so good, so rich. But talking about the Reformation, and do you know?
Side note: I think we went to John Knox's grave.
Did you?
Or some? You'd have to ask John this. He'll know better than me. But I think we did, because when we visited the UK, we went to Scotland. And I think that we went to his little statue thing.
He was incredible.
Yeah, but sorry, you were saying.
He was a true pioneer. But amidst the Reformation, or even prior to, so we're talking Dark Ages, Middle Ages, when the Baptists, they would be called Anabaptists, when they held to New Testament teachings and the palpable came into existence and the Catholic movement started, the persecution was so intense that 50 million, what they would call Paulicans or New Testament loyalists, 50 million of them died. Is that not an incredible amount of people? 50 million people, I mean, slaughtered in the most gruesome way.
Jeez.
Because they were viewed as heretics.
And who did that? Like who?
The Catholic Church, largely. Yeah, sorry, but read your history.
Yeah.
If you're Catholic out there, know your origins. Nevertheless, I'm thinking about doing a, Beck, what do you think about the idea of just doing it at Lighthouse, like a church history class?
I think people would like that.
Hey, Becca's all in, isn't she? Anywho, let's move on.
I think that'd be really interesting.
Yes.
Because I definitely need to learn more.
Maybe we should do an episode on church history.
That'd be great. We would need to get John in on that one.
No,
That's a John
forget
episode.
John. Forget John. John makes us all look dumb.
That's true. Well, he'd make me look dumb. You just rattled off a lot of stuff, and I was sitting here thinking, you're so smart. Wow.
And it was I just talked to John.
Exactly.
Anywho, okay, let me tell you where today's going. Today is going somewhere that has been very near and dear to me, so much so that I recently started a solo endeavor, little solo podcast called The Reset. And The Reset was really birthed out of, again, this frustration with complexity as it pertains to when people want to change, when people want to start afresh. Hence, a little slogan that went with The Reset was starting fresh without starting over. Come on, somebody.
Which I love. That's a great slogan.
Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate a good slogan.
That was a Seinfeld episode. Or
Really?
no, not really. It just sounded very much like a Seinfeld episode. All right. Anyway, moving right along. So the complexity is that I guess from my pastoral seat and my experience with people has been that, and the reason that I so resonate with this is because I feel an affinity for it and I like to do it. I, at certain times and in certain seasons, feel like I want a holistic reset. I think it's sort of the same vein as like spring cleaning, where people just want to sort of sweep the canvas, start new, set goals, new direction, new environment, new aspirations, new destinations. I think there's something intrinsic in people that we would love the opportunity to reset. I framed it, the initial episode, that was really sort of the catalyst for me thinking through, people's desire to reset. When my brothers and I were younger, we would play Nintendo. And when we would play Nintendo, prior to somebody winning, whether that was in Duck Hunt or Contra, do you remember Contra?
No.
Yeah, I said that. Very few people remember Contra. Do I got any viewers, listeners out there? These are my old friends that are seasoned in years and experience.
Seasoned gamers.
Seasoned gamers. Yeah, Contra, Mario Brothers. What would happen is my brothers and I would play, and then right prior to somebody winning and right on the verge of somebody losing, somebody would jump up and hit the reset button. And the reset really kept one from feeling like a failure. It was like a false... It was like a false tie.
You know what that's called now?
What?
That's called rage quitting.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So people like, especially in multiplayer games like online, if you're losing badly, you'll leave the game or you'll leave the lobby. You'll rage quit so that you don't officially lose. You left before that happened. Kind of the same thing.
That's a terrible title to have. You're a rage quitter.
Yeah.
Right. Back in our day, it was just you're a resetter.
Yeah. I'm
That
surprised. I'm surprised you guys allowed that in your context.
Well, we didn't, because what would ensue is we'd have then a knockdown drag out.
Okay, good.
Putting holes in walls and fighting, and then our Nintendo would get taken for about a week.
Then you yell at your parents, "Jack's a resetter."
Exactly. And so it's from that sort of experience that I thought, this is what so many of us would love to do from time to time, is hit the reset button, start afresh. And the incentive in doing it many times is that knowing what we know now, knowing the failures that we have endured, the sins that we've fallen into, the habits that we've allowed to shape us, the shortcomings that we've experienced, the destinations that we've wind up at. There's something in us that we would love to say, I'd like a reset. And the beauty is that I really believe that God offers it. In my heart of hearts, I really believe that he allows a fresh start without starting over. Because the reality is you can't start over. You can't start over. You got kids now, or you have debt now, or you have a job now, or a career path now, or a spouse now. But nevertheless, even amidst all that, there's something that says, I want a fresh start in so many ways. And this is why for many of us, and I know I'm going to broad brush here, but this is why many of us spend years in therapy. This is why many of us feel like we can't outlive our past. This is why so many of us feel like we are the labels that we've earned or the reputation that we've created. And we feel very hamstrung either to the present or to the past. And it breaks my heart, because I really feel like there's a lot on the table that Jesus offers, and yet we don't take advantage of it. Isn't it incredible, Boots, that God's word says that his mercies are new every single morning, as if the day itself is the reset.
Yeah.
The day itself is a new canvas, a new template, and he wants to walk with us in a way to realize many times the desires, the ambitions, the dreams that he's placed within us. This is why Paul the apostle will say, it is no longer I who live, but it's Christ who lives in me. This life that I live now in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That was such a paradigm shift of, I'm not living for me, I'm living for him, but every day offers an opportunity to sort of reshape, reset, and redo it in many ways where I believe leads us to where life is found and life is in the full. But it's a mentality shift. And the mentality shift in its genesis is you got to believe that a reset is not only possible, but it's what you've been invited into.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets. Anything to say to that?
What?
I didn't mean that in any way. Just wanted to give.
What you got to say about that?
You critical?
No, it was just funny because like you started to move on to something else, and then you like.
Right.
So I don't know what you saw in me, because you're always reading me. I do have just a very brief comment. Is that I love that concept, and I think it's such a relevant. I know you said you were painting with a broad brush, but I feel like it's widely applicable.
Huh.
So I think it's appropriate to paint with a broad brush here. Also, I feel like it's a very freeing message, because I think one of the scariest places someone can find themselves is in the mindset, it's too late for me.
Yes. Well said.
And whatever the context is, it's
Yeah.
too late for this marriage.
That's
it's
right.
too late for my finances. It's too late for God to use me. It's,
Yep.
fill in the blank. So the fact that his mercies are new every morning, the fact that we can start fresh without starting over, that critiques the mindset of it's too late. It's no, it's not.
Huh.
No, it's not.
Thank you for that.
You can
That's
you can
so
start
good.
fresh. Here's how.
Yep.
So I love the concept.
I really appreciate that. And the truth is that when people succumb to that mentality of it's too late, then what they feel left to do is adopt the mentality of, oh, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. I am what I've created. I'm trapped in what I've done up until this point. It's very demoralizing. So all you live then for is the high of the moment, or a temporary sort of relief valve occasionally, whether that comes as trite as little weekend partying, little trip occasionally throughout the year, little new purchase. That is so pauper thinking. That is so less than what God would say, hey, I didn't create you for such a baseline. I've created you on purpose for a purpose. And so adopt the invitation and receive it that you can reset. However, here's the complexity. The complexity is, and I appreciate that you noted, when I'm talking about a reset, it's not to one specific area. And it's also not holistic, meaning that sometimes a reset could just be in one area of a person's life. Like people want to reset. I would love a reset financially, because my psychology of money is jacked up, and I live for a paycheck and I pay bills with it, and any leftover I buy pleasure with it. I want to reset so that I can save and experience life to a fuller degree. Or I want to reset relationally. My relationships are tense and dysfunctional and jacked up, and I feel like I'm only repeating generational sort of patterns, and I don't like the way my relational dynamics are. I want to reset maritally. We got off to we started strong. We jumped a rail somewhere, and now it's just we're two roommates sharing bills. I don't like it. I want to reset. I want to reset parentally. I want to reset. I like a little reset occasionally aesthetically. Come on, somebody.
Yeah, you didn't have to tell anyone that.
I didn't. I'm tipping my hand. I like sometimes, hey, this is why people go into a living room and reorganize and orient their furniture. Yeah. Don't look at me like I got two heads back. You do it.
I do it all the time.
Like people want to reset, like the environment's changed. It makes them feel new. I dig that.
There's a big, I'm always talking about dopamine.
Yes.
But novelty and environmental change is one of the biggest dopamine spikes you can get. So change.
Really?
Yeah. Change, new, novelty.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey. Amen. So let's start changing our living rooms.
Exactly.
Let's start
That's
there.
all you got to do.
Baby steps.
The reset, your living room.
So here's where it gets really complex. It gets complex because, of course, all day long you could offer somebody a reset or a fresh start without starting over. And if you don't break it down practically and you leave it theoretical or ethereal, it just feels real abstract. Like, hey, that sounds great, but how do you actually do it? And you got to be careful that you don't over-spiritualize it, because I believe there's a real spiritual vein through it and a principle to be, stewarded. But I really believe that it does get practical. And so in me, this has been very cathartic for me because I'm a resetter. I like that. I don't want to live the same year 75 times over. I want to learn from the past. I want to own my mistakes. I want to own my failures, but I also want to step into new because I believe God's that good, that big, and that inviting. So I have made it my aim as of late to go, what are the practical steps of a reset? What is it that creates the fast track to at least get on the road that leads you to said destination? And so what I've done is I've broken it into 6 steps.
6 little bite-sized pieces.
6. This is going to sound like an infomercial. And you can purchase them for 3 installments.
Well, no, we give them the first 5 for free, and then the last one.
Touche. So the 6 steps are what I really believe. So just to speak to the solo endeavor, the solo endeavor was really a podcast where I was going to walk through the 6 sort of massive points and then the sub points thereunder. Yeah. But what I realized is that as I've been working through it and writing a little bit,
Getting choked up. This means a lot to you.
Not that much.
Oh.
I just had something in the back of my throat. I really wanted to stop and pause. So I'm going to stop and pause that podcast because I really feel like I want to write on it.
Yeah.
I really want to get it.
Let it percolate a bit more.
Percolate. I've even haven't told Beck this yet, but I've even pulled Ruth.
Oh.
Mama Ruth. I've pulled her into it. And sort of along the line of what would it look like, babe, from a woman's point of view, a spouse's point of view, if we were to apply this principle to, let's say, a marriage or a relationship? What would that look like to reset, yet keeping to the 6 steps? So,
marriage retreat content.
Come on, somebody.
I can see it.
Yes, at the Ritz-Carlton.
Before you get into the practicals, though, if I may, just chime in very briefly.
Please.
And say,
and I want you here's.
You're going to tell me what to chime in?
I want you to be critical. I want to invite the criticism of finding the holes in it, because you've never really heard it. You've heard me sort of real briefly speak of the 6, but this is sort of why I wanted to put the podcast on pause, because I want to do the due diligence to really shoot the holes in it. Because as I'm working through it personally and conceptually, I'm finding holes in it. So, hey, to our listeners and viewers, I invite the same. I want to hear, thank you for allowing me to sort of flesh this out. But I want to flesh it out, but I also want you to be critical of it, lest it's an overpromise, underdeliver.
Yeah. So
Beck, you too.
Got it.
You got a mic.
The Simplexity Lab has expanded into the comment section. So add your
right.
feedback. No, I'll do that throughout the duration of this episode if something comes to mind. But I just wanted to frame it.
Let's not be too critical, though.
You invited it. No, I would encourage, as the listeners, viewers do that, also think through the specific area that you would perhaps look for a reset.
Yeah.
Because there are already several things that come to mind for me, and that's kind of the lens I'm going to be listening to this content through.
Yeah.
One of which sounds silly, but I really want to reset my study. So, like, growing up, late high school, college, like, I was very passionate about studying, like, Christian thinking.
Okay.
And so, like, I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan. I would read a number of his books and read and dabble in other things. And I've just kind of fallen away from that over the past several years. And,
right.
And I stumbled upon some old notes that I had, and I was just, like, almost sad.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened to me?
Right.
Like, and so this is it can feel like a trite example, but I really want to reset some of those things that I feel like God gave me a passion and a desire for, and it's like, no, let's bring that back.
I love it.
So yeah, that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking through as we delve into this content. But I'd encourage the listeners personalize.
And see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Hence, let me give you number one. Okay. Number one. That actually is very congruent with what you just said. I believe, so you're going to notice here, and this is how I do. It just keeps me in track in my thoughts. Everything starts with a re. Reset, rewords. Okay. So the first step I believe in a reset is to reimagine. And what I mean by that is that I believe life has such a way to pull you down into cognitive pathways, sort of habitual ruts. You do the same thing every day. You're sort of on autopilot. Why? It's what you're responsible for many times. It's the demand signal in life. You got kids now. You got bills to pay. You got pressures you're responsible for. You got relationships to uphold that we slip into. But I believe the first thing that you got to do in order to reset, you got to reimagine. And you got to reimagine what were the passions, ambitions, and dreams that maybe you once had. What is it that you love to do, that you did do, and because of life, you no longer do, only to wind up at a place that you really didn't want to? So like, I use the analogy, when you walk into a mall, per se, and it's brand new to you, and you don't know where the store is that you desire to go, you find that board that says you are here. I believe that in order to reset, we have to really determine where we are. Where are we by way of our emotional state? Are we on a daily? Are we more joyful than we are sorrowful? Are we more up than we are down? Are we more at peace, or are we unsettled, anxious, worryful? Are we content, or do we always feel like there's more to get and we're ungrateful? Some of those are not going to be remedied by a reset. Some of those are only going to be remedied by Jesus and us understanding what we already do have and finding gratitude therein. But you have to determine where you are. And I think when you do personal inventory, looking at the proverbial board and going, you are here, it's only then that you can answer, do I want to be there? Or can you be honest enough with yourself to go, I don't like where I am. I don't like where I am. I don't like this place. And in order for you to get to that destination, whatever it is, wherever it is that you want to reset, you cannot keep moving and just think through happenstance you're going to arrive there. Because the reality is we're a sum totals of our decisions. We make choices and our choices make us. And this is why many of us feel like, I want to reset. What we're ultimately saying is we want to reset in our decision-making process because our decisions have caused us to arrive at a place that we really don't like and we're really not content. And so I think it takes introspection, it takes being contemplative to go, where am I?
What do you think is the best context for that introspection or evaluation?
Wonderful question.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I really, when it comes to the reset, I really want to do like a workbook of going, where are you in these areas of life? Let's clearly define your relational status. And I'm not just talking about married, single. I'm talking, are your relationships healthy? And do you like you in the context of those relationships? Or do you feel in the context of those relationships, you're constantly selling out? You're constantly trying to parade yourself as somebody that you're really not. You're performing and trying to earn approval rather than being yourself. Where are you? And let's work through the gamut with that. Or, hey, are you real comfy in your skin and you like the friends that you have and your marriage is firing on all cylinders? It's not always a fail. Yeah. Sometimes it's, hey, this is rich. Amen. Well, then acknowledge that. Be grateful for it. You might find yourself on the board and say, I don't want to go anywhere. But where are you then financially? Are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? Are you stressed most of the time? Or are you comfortable because your decisions have created margin that you're grateful for? Where are you emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Let's take those three and let's tease it out. Where are you on any given day at 9 a.m. and at 4 p.m.? I'm a different person after 5 p.m., so I'm not even going there.
After 2.
True. Where are you? Do you feel like, hey, when you're by yourself in the own recesses of your thoughts, can you sit somewhere quietly without scrolling on your phone and go, I'm a content person? Or do you go, I am really unsettled and I don't know why? Where do your thoughts go? Do you think pessimistically or optimistically? All of that requires, let's reimagine, because there's something about the beauty of youth when you're not jaded and hardened and pessimistic and life hasn't busted you up, that you actually had dreams and ambitions that you were like, this is where I hope to be. And some of them, hey, you wanted to be an astronaut. Ain't gonna happen. Get it. But there's some things that were intrinsic to your construct, the way God fearfully and wonderfully made you. Let's reimagine those. So I'm
Yeah.
going to give you wave tops. So that's one.
Okay.
All right. Number dos. The second would be to do the work in rewinding. You got to rewind. So now that you know where you are, to rewind would mean you go back to where you jumped the rail and understand, where did I fail? Where did the pattern begin? Like when it comes to relationships, I believe, this is just a sidebar, a quick sidebar. Many times people, and I'll hear this in young ladies, I'll hear this in young men, they'll say something to the effect of, when I'll suggest, hey, what about so-and-so? Or, hey, I was thinking, have you ever considered so-and-so?
Oh, you mean like matchmaking?
Matchmaking.
Okay.
I'm a terrible matchmaker.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Becca's like, yeah, you are.
But what'll happen is that I'll say, hey, what about so-and-so? And I'll hear, they're not my type. They're not my type. In some sense, there's a legitimacy to that. And in some certain situations, that's as right as rain. I'm way off. But many times, what we have confused is we've confused type for pattern. And what I mean by that is pattern is like, good girls like bad guys. And like, let's go high school. High school, it was always the good girls that, would overlook the good dude. The gentle, the kind, the chivalrous, the well-spoken. They wanted the bad boy. Okay, all right. That's just commonplace. But what'll happen is that decision then creates a pattern. And then they get older, and they've repeated that pattern of where they pick dudes that are jerks, insensitive, abusive, untrustworthy, on and on and on. And they don't like that part of them, but what they grow accustomed to is the pattern. And they identify the pattern as, that's my type. Well, I then have to go, it's not that they're not your type, it's that they're not your pattern. And maybe your pattern is broken. So let's understand, where did that pattern start? Many times, if you snap a line and bring it all the way back to the formative years or their teenage years or even their early 20s or collegiate years or whatever, they were brokenhearted. They wanted a quick fix. They found a dude that had a silver tongue. They didn't know anything about. They made a decision. That dude led to another dude, to another dude, to another dude. That pattern, then they convinced themselves, that's my type. Wrong. A bad decision created a pattern. Let's go back and rewind and figure out, why did you make that decision? And are you still making those types of decisions? That pattern becomes commonplace in finances. You got, you spent. That's a pattern. That now pattern has created debt or stress or anxiety. A pattern of how you are around other people. You're insecure. So in the context of relationships, you're always performing because you're not comfortable in your own skin. So you think you have to earn their respect, or what have you, because you don't know who you are in Jesus. It applies to every area of life. And I think that in order for one to reset, they have to reimagine, determine where they are, and then rewind to go, where did it go wrong? So that you can defeat what you then can define.
Yeah. Wow. I've never heard it described like that. Like the type versus pattern thing. I think that there's a lot of weight to that. And frankly, as I'm, listening to you and processing, you said to shoot holes in it. here I come.
Oh,
Yeah.
The only thing that comes to mind is this is going to take a lot of work.
Yes, it does.
So to your point about having a workbook or something like that, I think, yeah, that's maybe that's a big part of this.
Right.
Is everybody needs a reset or wants a reset in some way, I'm sure.
Totally.
But it's not going to be a snap of the fingers thing. It's
Amen.
going to take a lot. So
Hey, which is sort of the reason, that statement right there
Yeah.
is sort of the reason, like the podcast, I felt like this is not, there's not enough to sink your teeth. There's not enough substance that I can provide verbally that takes you time diligently that will actually prove really fruitful. So let's back up for a minute because I believe it's legit. But to your point, bud, I feel like it does take a lot of work.
yeah.
Which then leads us to our third. Third is once you're able to rewind and determine the failures, the sins, the poor decisions, you then, and this is a work of the Holy Spirit, but it's also a work that you partner with him on, and that is then you have to resign. And that means that you have got, people spend their life in therapy because they have not accepted the beautiful grace, mercy, and invitation of Jesus to resign themselves from their past. People are convinced, I am what I've done. I am who people say that I am. I am the reputation that I earned. I am the label that even I have projected upon myself, or even mothers, fathers, siblings, spouses, broken relationships, and they have never resigned themselves from it to say, I deserve a new life in Jesus with a new identity because that's what's been given to me because of his accomplished work on that cross. When Paul says to the Corinthians, those that are in Christ are a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. That means that you and I then get to resign ourselves from our past failures. And that takes work. And that takes you being convinced by the Holy Spirit and then walking in it that I am not what I've done. I am who Jesus says that I am. But if you don't do that, then there's no, I wouldn't say take a single step forward because you're just dragging all of your baggage now into your brand new reset. Yeah. It's a futile attempt.
Taking old furniture into a new living room.
That's it. So I think that there's got to be some real work in the resignation, if you will. That because his mercies are new every morning, I'm resigning myself from yesterday and I'm starting brand spanking new. I'm resigning myself from parenthood trauma, from brokenheartedness, from even my own trustworthiness. I'm going to step into all that God has for me.
What do you think one of the biggest roadblocks people experience in resigning themselves?
I think that they have convinced themselves. I think that we live in a culture, and this culture plays hand in glove with our own mental, cognitive thoughts, that we are fully convinced we are what we do. We are what we do, rather than believing we are who Jesus says we are. For many people, that feels far too abstract and far too theoretical, theological, lofty. That's beautiful. That's beautiful to say that in a sermon. But for me to be convinced of it, nah, because that's told me by Jesus. It's much more accessible in people's mind's eye to go, I am what I've done. Because here's the problem. Just because you reset in the resigning stage does not mean that you still don't have the same proclivities and tendencies and personalities that you had prior. You are still in many ways prone. Your flesh is prone to go that way. So it is a moment by moment reminder. Hey, I may resign, but I'm still Sammy. But this is where Paul says, so now we're going to sow to the Spirit rather than the flesh. We're going to resign what our flesh did. We're going to adopt who the Spirit says we are, and we're going to walk ye in it and experience a reset that comes with it. But I think the constant reminder many times is the enemy's workshop of going, you can resign all day long. However, but hear me on this. There's a whole class that goes with that. There's like a whole lot of underpinning stages of that I really believe creates a lot of freedom.
Sneak peek of that?
Sneak peek of that is, that the Bible says in Proverbs, it says to guard your heart with all diligence because from it flow all issues of life. Many times what gets embedded in one's heart by either the work of their own hands, the proclamation of people that were around us that were toxic, sins that we've committed, decisions that we've made, we've allowed it to penetrate the very thing that Solomon said, guard with all vigilance and diligence. Well, once it gets in you, he said, if you do not guard it, then you neglect the fact that what goes in will come out. And so your life becomes a byproduct of what you've allowed in. This is why Jesus said, it's not what goes in a man that defiles him. It's that which comes out. But in essence, what he was saying is what goes in will come out. So a sneak peek is there has got to be an awareness of what's in your heart. There's got to be a cleansing of what's in your heart. And then there has to be a refilling of what's in your heart. There's got to be a brand spanking new. Chris Hodges does an incredible job on this in his book called Freedom, of where he talks about the matter of the heart. But it's heart surgery. Resigning is heart surgery, because then you're like the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz that's bringing a brand new heart.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So once you resign, stage number 4 is a refocus. So this is, and I love this stage because the refocus is of like, let's take, for instance, reimagine. You've reimagined once you've gone, I am here. In Boots' case, he's going to go, I loved education. I loved study. I loved stretching my scope and paradigm of what Jesus has done through the age, whether, reading and studying and all of that. But I got away from it. Well, now you're going to rewind and go, where did I? Mm-hmm. Hey, many times, like a lot of people, they want to feel better. They want to feel better physically, emotionally, mentally, just like you've been doing. Mm-hmm. Cold plunges, sauna, being in the gym, eating healthy, yada, yada, yada. You know what derails them? Is that the first thing they do when they wake up is they grab this.
Yeah.
Where they should pop up, throw their gym clothes on, drive, or go into the garage, work out, or get up, have a cup of coffee, a pre-workout, get after it. They lay there for 30 minutes mindlessly. Before they know it, they look over at the clock. They realize, I'm running late. They repeat the same pattern day in, day out because of this accessibility and because of the cognitive grooves, and then they feel disgusting because of it. Mm. The derailment is not like this, major. The derailment is put that phone in another room so that you got to get up and you got to get moving, and then you got to start making decisions. This wasn't even a decision. It was mindless because many people live in autopilot, and then they want a reset. Reset will cause you got to turn off autopilot, and you got to be much more methodical and intentional. But the reason they don't feel good is because of the trap of this one thing.
Yeah. And I've started putting mine on the other side of the room.
Boom.
because that leads to so many daggone problems that we experience.
Little fox, babe.
Yeah.
So the refocus is then, you know what? I'm going to set goals, and I'm going to set strategic goals that make sure that in 30 days from now, Boots is able to say, I've been studying a lot more. I've been reading. So what are those goals? Those goals, in your sense, are as pragmatic as I am not, this evening, I'm going to make a decision. I'm not Netflixing. I'm not picking up my phone. I'm going to work through this book to the tune of 15 pages a night, or I won't get into bed until I've accomplished these goals, because the final destination is I either want to get my master's, I at least want to read 12 books a year, whatever it is, it's a refocus that then you build around. But I believe there's legwork before you refocus, because there's got to be a clean sweep in order to have a clean direction.
Okay. I'm processing all of this.
Hit me.
So your biggest, what's the biggest takeaway of refocus, if you could sum it up in a crux?
Yep. That you take the dreams, ambitions, and aspirations of the past, you bring them to the present, and you orient your life so as to realize them.
Okay, so it's almost like going back to the example of the map in the mall.
Yep.
You are here, here's the dot. You're refocusing where you want to go.
Right.
Here's the second dot.
Yep.
And then it's the strategic implementation of here's how I'm going to get there.
100%.
Okay.
So let's take the context of marriage.
Okay.
There's no intimacy, very little communication. You don't fight a whole lot because there's not a whole lot of spark or passion. This is not what you dreamed of. You thought you were going to travel a little bit. You thought you were going to enjoy one another's company over the dinner table. She laughed at your jokes in seasons past. You loved her presence when you would go out. And now that is not your reality. Okay, we're going to refocus our marriage. What does that look like? What does that look like? Well, I don't fully trust with me and people that they know how to get from the first floor of the mall to the east wing, second floor. And so what you need in order to get from here to here is you need to take this desired destination and you need to pull somebody into it to say, we want our marriage thriving on all cylinders. What does that look like? That could be as practical as you're going to start praying every single morning. I don't care if you got to leave at 4 o'clock, then wake her up and wake him up and start your day built on the foundation of God's word and truth, and spend 5 minutes in prayer. And hey, make sure that you establish on every Thursday night you're going to date. And you're going to work through all the awkwardness of what you haven't done in years. And you're going to learn to talk to one another. How do you talk to one another when you haven't talked in the last 6 years? You're actually going to download questions off the internet to invoke conversation, to learn new things about one another that you took for granted. You're actually going to plan a trip once every 6 months, just one weekend. I don't care if you got to go to the Doll Motel. Actually, don't you dare go to the Doll Motel.
Don't do that.
You get shot there. Don't. You're going to do that. You're going to be in church every Sunday, and you're going to serve together in some capacity. You're going to read a book on marriage. You're going to do the things all in the name of refocusing so that you arrive at the very dream God placed in your heart when you were a young guy, young girl. And you're going to break the pattern that you've created, whether it's over 6 months or over a year, so that you can realize it. That's why it gets very practical, and you better be careful that you don't over-spiritualize it and think it's a silver bullet. And you better know from Jump Street, do not lose heart in well-doing. Just because you don't see immediate results. You don't like the results that you have. That's why we want to reset. So just because you don't see the results, it should not cause you to quit. Believe God for what he's placed in your heart or the dreams. God has given it to you. And I know this sounds self-helpy a little bit, but you deserve it. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. God created you on purpose for a purpose. So step into it. Step into life and go get it. Turn off the news and just bad commentary and what's going on, and refocus to say, as for me and my house, as for me and my path, I'm going to walk it diligently because I don't like where I am. That's refocus.
Yep.
Then fifth, here's where it's recover. Recover is where you actually start to experience the benefits. Here's what I believe. I'm going to say it. I believe in God's economy. He's created us in such a way that we should be so good at celebration. We celebrate far too infrequently. Tomorrow is not promised to any person. Yeah. Today is sufficient enough in its own trouble. What that means is we should celebrate every win. On my way here this morning, Ruth called me. Mama Ruth called me, said, hey, we had a hectic morning. She asked me late last night, can I take Lucia to school? I said, absolutely. I'm such a servant.
You're so flexible.
I know. She said, hey, she calls me. She says, where are you at? I said, I just got my coffee. I'm coming down the road. She goes, we didn't pray. I said, all right, well, hey, let's get after it, girl. She said, hey, but I just want to celebrate. I just feel like over the past several weeks in what we've started to read together at night. We're doing this thing where we read 10 pages. Actually, she's reading A Trail of Blood with me. Yeah. It's a pretty gory book.
What is that?
It's all about church history.
Oh,
yeah.
Hence the opener.
Yes.
I'm the same way. Like whatever I'm reading or listening to, that is the topic of conversation.
Totally.
Hannah's so sick of this stuff.
Right. Because Ruth's reading a book right now called Traveling Light by Max Lucado. He is such a beautiful writer.
Yeah. I've read one thing by him.
Okay.
I can't remember what it's called though.
He's so beautiful, but he's a bit flowery. And Ruth likes that. Yep. Hey, whatever blows your hair back. But she likes that. And so I said, and she goes, but I wanna read that. I said, do you really? Do you really? Because I'm not into that right now. And I was steeped in this. And so
I prefer A Trail of Blood, personally.
But she's been into it. So I read, 7 or 8 pages. She then reads 7 or 8 pages. And she just said, hey, I just want to celebrate. We had a great week last week. I learned some. This created a ton of conversation. And I just thought, I don't care if you got to celebrate a day of victory, a day of, hey, you lost a pound. Celebrate it, man. Hey, you went a week without fighting. Celebrate it. Hey, you realize that, man, your digestion of good material has created good thoughts and a deeper contentment. Celebrate it. You don't have to listen to the pessimist that says, don't celebrate too soon because you don't know if it's here to stay. Shut up. Just celebrate now. You're exactly right. I don't know if I'm here to stay. But as far as this day, it was a win. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. I want to celebrate. I believe this is why, Paul said to the church of Thessalonica, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in all matters give thanks, for this is the will of God concerning you in Christ Jesus. We should be good at celebrating. Celebrate God's goodness. Celebrate that you had a week where the kids weren't sick. I don't care, but we live in a culture that says whine and complain. We're wonderful at that. And then we wonder, why aren't we happy? Or why aren't we where we want to be? I believe you celebrate along the way.
Yeah. So this might be an unnecessary question, but it's where my head went. So
yeah.
I'm sorry. Is celebrating as simple as acknowledging success, or do other things go along with it? Like obviously rejoicing has a certain connotation.
True,
like
true.
when do you throw the party? When do you just, hey, a phone call? You know what I mean?
100%. I think that's a great question, buddy. Celebration is up to you. And what that means is hey, let's say in your refocus, I think that refocus should entail, when do we celebrate?
Ooh, that's good.
When do we celebrate?
That's part of the strategy.
Part of the strategy, buddy. When do we throw a party? At what degree of success do we really celebrate? Do we go out and treat ourselves, or do we, tell other people about, what God has done? What stage is that? But all along the way, there can be like let's call them tempered celebrations.
Tempered.
like a private celebration where you throw a party in the dark.
Yeah. Huh. I'm just
Actually,
picturing glow sticks.
you rave in your living room.
In your closet.
Mini celebration.
Many celebrations.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then lastly is then you reflect. And you reflect on, hey, what is working? What is not? What was providing us joy? What no longer is? Sorry, you see me keep... What has God done? Where do I need to course correct? That's life. That's life of, it's almost cyclical, because reflecting has a degree of reimagining, but a reflecting is looking over this reset process and really determining, is it effective? Are we winning? Where are we now in comparison to where we were? And then to reshape it for the next leg of the reset. Because I believe that we can always do a reimagine, a rewind, a resign, a refocus, a recovery, and then a reflect. I believe it's just a wonderful pattern that I literally, Boots, I'm not preaching this conceptually or theoretically. I'm really speaking about this personally because I want to help, and it's really helped me.
Yeah.
And it's my way of taking the complex and making it plain and simple so that I have a track to follow. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's it. That's all, folks.
Yeah, as if that was not enough. Are you not entertained? No, I think that I don't know. I always enjoy our conversations around the table. But this one in particular, it just feels like it has a lot of substance to it, a lot of refreshing to it. And I'm excited to take those steps and apply them strategically to different areas of my life.
Love it.
And I'm sure a lot of people listening feel the same way. Mike, do you feel the same way?
Yes, I do.
He said no. I'm just kidding.
Go crab catcher. He said yes. You think it's got legs to it?
Of course, I really do. I really do.
Thank you. Thank
Becca?
you.
Hey, so I love it. I think that it can apply to any area of life, not just relationships or. But I do have a question for you.
Oh,
so
okay.
say you're someone that has more than one area to reset in.
Yeah.
What do you do first? Do you try and just do one at a time? Do you do multiple reset? Like, what would you say for someone that does have more than one area to reset in?
And truth be told, I think that's going to be a lot of us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot that has multiple. I would highly encourage one at a time. Mm. Why? Because I believe the one will give you the confidence for the second. I think too much has diminishing effects to it. That it can be a little demoralizing to try to overhaul one's life. Now, hey, I submit this to the judgment of the person, but if I were to coach somebody through this, I would say, let's take one. And don't believe the enemy's lie or even your own negative thinking that it takes a long, long time.
Yeah.
Some areas will not take as long as others. Some patterns are really hard to break. But I believe that if you were to pick one and then see the traction with, it'll give you all the incentive and confidence for the second.
Yeah. And I would attest to that without even knowing that's what happened. But I think that's a great question, Becca. And that's kind of what that's how I find myself in this season of like, you know, I want to get back into reading C.S. Lewis books or whatnot.
Right.
Because in a way, I've reset some of my health habits. Like
Totally.
I've gotten to the gym. I've done those things that you talked about, and that's enabled me to see clearly, like, what are the other areas of my life that I want to reset.
Absolutely.
So I think the one at a time strategy, it's working for me.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that like what James Clear in his book Atomic Habits?
Yep.
He would commend the same.
Yeah.
Pick one.
Pick
Steward
one.
it.
I think Rochelle's talked about that.
Yep.
And Clear's whole thing is 1% changes.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do this holistic and everything must go like a liquidation sale. But yeah, I think that's a sustainable approach. And like you said, it'll lend itself to confidence as it unfolds. Alrighty, sir. Well, like I said, really enjoyed this chat. I'm excited for where this is going to go.
Thank you, partner.
Moving forward. Thank you so much for listening or watching. We ask that if you are, that you would go ahead and follow us, either on Instagram at Simplexity Podcast, or you'd give us a follow on Spotify or Apple, wherever you check us out. But we appreciate it.
Love you guys.